director of this fine film, Levan. Okay. Well, so there's a lot to talk about, but actually, first I want to talk about you. As we're sitting here at the Los Angeles Film School, what would you say your training was, if any? Did you have any formal training as a filmmaker, or did you just kind of learn it on the fly?
I guess I learned on the fly.
Sorry, hold your hand.
I didn't really have any education, like, in that way as you're describing. But I mean, it's all about to go out and try, I guess that's the best way to learn something,
That makes sense. You've been working with Tim Berg, aka AVICII, for a long time. When did you guys first meet? When did you start being allowed to film what he was doing and start kind of documenting things?
We met 2012, I think, for the first time we met, and that was at a dinner, and then we just started talking, and then he had his charity project that he wanted to donate $1 million to, and they asked me to write a TV show of it, which I did, and we did that project together, and then it just took off. From that point on, we kind of clicked, I guess, and so that was it.
It seemed like you became almost a part of the crew. Like, you had really amazing access for the footage that we just saw in this documentary. And we'll get into kind of some of the spoiler stuff later, but when did you just kind of realize that you could be around him with a video camera that was on?
I mean, we lived together so many years.
Okay.
I mean, literally, in the same house. So it just became a very normal thing to me, to kind of walk around and film and stuff. And I never saw him as a superstar or anything like that, because, I mean, when we work with somebody that close, it just became, very normal thing. But at the same time, we really had this huge respect for each other's work, and we never kind of crossed the lines he never crossed my lines when it comes to the professionalism and things like that. And I really kind of respected what he was doing and his private life and stuff. So, but I mean, from the very beginning, we just understood that we were doing it, and he understood that it would take so many years as it took, but I didn't understand that from the beginning, because I was pushing the deadline year by year, and it just took 4 or 5 years to complete the doc, and I was not ready on that from the beginning. So I had to leave my girlfriend in Sweden, and I'm the CEO of the production company that I just left. I mean, I never left the company, but
Right.
I was away, so it takes lots of energy to be aboard and kind of try to still be that CEO you've been before.
It's just fascinating because in his sphere, you just became the filmmaker. So it was just normal for you to always have a camera rolling. And what I'm curious about, and I'm in no way asking for the money details, really just more the relationship details, in which if you're making a documentary that it doesn't exactly have an end date in mind, were you on the payroll for AVICII,
No, I mean,
or were you
didn't-
just kind of doing it speculatively, expecting later on?
I mean, we didn't knew that from the beginning, as I said.
Of course, of course.
It just became a thing,
Right, no, I know.
Because I felt like, all right, now I've been filming 2 years, and I need 1 more year in order to kind of understand where we are heading, But as I said, I mean, I'm the CEO of the production company that I have, and that's been kind of my job, my real job.
Right. So you were doing it independently, and he was not paying you during that time. Okay. All right. But he was taking you with him, obviously, for the travel and stuff like that.
This was something that kind of became very personal to me
Sure.
year by year, because from the beginning, it was just super naive idea of to, do a documentary about Avicii. You know what I mean? Kind of like that. And he didn't really had those like hits when we started. It just became, more and more successful. And I just felt like, this is something very special. So I really wanted to give it like as many years as possible in order to just, find out how the story could end.
Of course.
I mean, I guess that's the curiosity of the documentary filmmaker, in the end of the day. I mean,
where's it going to end? Exactly. Well, so, you, as you said, had access early on. And I always love it in a music documentary when you kind of see the creation of a song. And so what was it like to capture those moments for Lay Me Down, for Wake Me Up, for the other songs that are in the film, where you're getting these early versions of it? And then later on, because you could have probably done a 10 or 20 minute piece on each song. And it could have been a documentary that was just focused on the music. And by the way, since I'm sure you have the footage, I hope you will put out longer versions of the creation of each song. But just kind of curious what it was like capturing that and then knowing how much to use versus how much of Tim's personal life to have in the movie.
I mean, when you are in a studio with the artists that are, doing the songs, it might, last like 3-4 days, and they are just jamming back and forth, and they are doing something you don't really understand from the beginning. Oh, this one's gonna be a hit, But I mean, some of the melodies are like from the very beginning, very super kind of clear that all right, this is something else, but you're not having that kind of understanding that this track is amazing, kind of like that, because it's only the melodies. And those like processes back and forth, it's difficult to understand which song's gonna break it that big, but it's super exciting to see the creation of the songs, because sometimes it can be just one note like boop boop boop, and then it just became like step by step a song. And I mean I recorded almost I guess like more than few hundred terabytes of the studio sessions.
Yeah,
I definitely did that, and I mean it is very interesting to be there and kind of hear and understand the whole process, because sometimes it can be like one note that they are working on like entire day, and it's like one note, it's just beep boop. I mean, it's a very weird thing to kind of experience.
right.
But then you're like step by step appreciating those moments, because you're realizing that those notes are the big deal.
One of my favorite things was showing the business side with Ash, when he's completely lying about saying that he has a 500,000 euro offer on the table, and he really only had 140. That's a good management tactic, and I'm curious if there was ever any debate if that would end up in the movie, or if the people that he was negotiating with have since seen it and have been angry or annoyed.
I have no idea, to be honest with you. I have no idea, to be honest with you. Actually not. I have no idea.
Did you catch a lot of moments like that with Ash and some of the other people?
I mean, I never filmed Ash by myself like that, daily basis, because that was the part of the archival material that I received from Tim. But, I mean...
So who did film that? Was it Tim that was filming it?
I don't know, actually. I mean, he had, a bunch of photographers, and he had his, like, archival hard drives that I received from the very beginning. So, yeah.
Tell me about your equipment. I mean, when you're traveling on the road, was it just you with a camera and a mic, or did you have a couple people with you and have multiple cameras, especially to capture the concert situation, in which you did something really fascinating, in which you had an over-the-shoulder shot that you replicate across the world. So you see what Tim sees. You see the landscape change literally in front of him. What were some of the other things that you were able to do? Because you got a lot of footage with the audiences as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, mostly I'm using the Canon cameras, C300, which are the great cameras to, really kind of be on the go and still get the quality. But we also had, I mean, most of the time when it was shows, then I had my friends joining me. One of them is here, Sebastian.
Raise your hand.
And, you know, like cool,
All right.
very good DOPs that, you know, were kind of on the same page as me visually. And, you know, we knew how to approach the audience and the crowd and, you know, hectic moments and those slow-mos and things. And then we had this thing that I would always stay behind team because I knew exactly, you know, how it worked. And then I had my friends spread, you know, between the crowd and the DJ booth. And then they would, like, you know, take step by step into the crowd and, you know, shoot some of the slow-mos and stuff. So, yeah.
How many hours of concert footage did you accumulate?
Oh my God. It is a lot. I mean, I would say it is like 75% of the footage.
Oh, wow.
That contains like only shows, because you just want to shoot as much as possible.
Right.
You don't want to, you know, miss anything, and it requires you to, you know, really kind of be on watch, and you just, you know, go on and shoot as much as possible. And then if you have like multiple cameras, you know, then it just becomes a few terabytes just in, you know, a few minutes. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
When you're dealing with that much footage, because I mean, we're going to have a spoiler section in a few moments, but when you're dealing with that much footage, logging is really important in a documentary so that you know what you have.
Yeah.
Were you finding yourself able to log, or did you have to get a second team because so much was unfolding in front of you so fast to
Yeah.
keep track of what was going on with all your footage?
I mean, logging is, as you say, a very important thing to do, and especially when you're traveling in so many different countries, and I think we did 49 countries in 3 years or something like that, which is, you know, crazy amount of flight hours. But I never logged. I never did that. I did that afterwards, and I'm happy that I did that afterwards, because it really gave me the understanding of the material in a completely different way. Because I mean, when you shoot something, then you have your idea of what it was there and there, you know. But when you watch it, like, you know, a few weeks after or a few days after, then it might not gonna be the same kind of, you know, the understanding you have for the content as you thought from the beginning. And that really gave me, you know, kind of the perspective of what I had. So it turned out to be right for me. But I mean, that's something that, you know, all the producers are hating, and especially editors. I mean, when you know, go to the editor and drop like 100 different hard drives and, you know, just start it, I mean, that's terrible. But we did it together afterwards, as I say, and yeah, it was.
How long did it
really
take
good.
you to go through the footage once you
3
sat
months,
down?
exactly.
3 months?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
And there was just hundreds of hours, clearly.
I don't remember exactly how many hours we had, but I mean, we are talking about, you know, 400, 500, 600 terabytes of material.
That's
different,
crazy.
Different cameras as well.
Right, in different formats, of course, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that makes it even more difficult.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to continue without getting into spoilers. So I'm going to tell our podcast listeners, if you have not yet seen AVICII True Stories, press pause, go see it, come back, and hear the rest of the podcast. You know, when you sit down with something like this, do you start in your mind doing a paper cut? And when I say paper cut, I mean writing out an outline of, like, you know what? Because your structure was very interesting, in which you just kept it simple. You had 3 chapters in his life: the beginning, the crazy years, and then slowly him winding down. So, at what point did you realize that that was going to end up the structure of your film?
The idea of the chapters, I had that idea from the very beginning, though, and I don't know why. I'm a huge fan of a Swedish director called Roy Andersson, and he always divides his films in chapters, which I really appreciate a lot as a filmmaker. And I had that idea from the beginning, and I was not sure if it could work for a documentary, because it's always pretty hard to kind of, you know, format the red line in a way that I did. but it turned out that it worked very well for us, and you know, I was very excited about it because it gives you really kind of clear explanation of each time and each bullet point, which I think is pretty nice thing to give to the viewers, because there is no kind of time for misunderstanding. It just doesn't go, you know, and never ends. You always have that, you know, those small moments in between to kind of breathe and, you know, take it in what you just saw. And I think that's very important to, you know, have in a general structure when you do the storytelling.
You achieved a level of intimacy for a popular artist that few people kind of have achieved in the past, in which you literally take us into the hospital room when his appendix bursts and when he's recovering from pancreatitis. I'm curious, were there ever any talks? Because I would assume that he was approving cuts of your film and what was going to go in and what was going to go out. What he thought of kind of showing those vulnerable moments, because it was good that you showed it, because it's a side that the fans don't always see of obviously if his appendix was going to burst, it was going to burst, but the toll that traveling and performing take on a performer's life is not always as chronicled as deeply as you did in this movie.
I think the idea from the very beginning was to be as honest as possible, and that was the key for you know, whole project. And we didn't want it to, you know, kind of made up stories and tell them in a way that suited like me or him, you know, and fans. We just wanted to be, you know, super honest about everything, because we thought that would be a great idea to really show to the younger people and the artists and the up-and-comers that, you know, to be successful takes lots of energy, and you know, you might become successful, but there is no guarantees that you can carry on, you know, and that was kind of like the very early idea from the very beginning, and we just, you know, kept that entire process. So yeah, that was why. I mean, we wanted to be honest, you know.
We have an opioid crisis here in the United States, and it was just devastating to see American doctors in Miami prescribing him Percocet, you know, because and kind of saying it in the way that don't worry, it's not addictive, in which, you know, even he points out, you know, it's derived from what heroin's made from. I'm curious what his views were on those sections of the film, because again, there was just a raw honesty about not his fault, like literally being prescribed from a surgery, which happens to a lot of people as an intro, you know, non-recreational, him having a habit now that he had to kick.
We never discussed like segments in that way. I mean, he saw the doc before it came out, of course.
Of course.
And he was reflective about, you know, the whole story, but we never kind of went back and, you know, discussed like details by details, because I guess, you know, I mean, if I would see the documentary about my life, I mean, that's kind of difficult, you know. So we wanted to do as smooth as possible. We saw the doc, we had our conversations about, you know, like the documentary in general, and that was it.
Was there anything you could tell us about that Tim really wanted removed from the movie, or something that he wanted more of that wasn't there?
I mean, the honesty, again, you know, we wanted to be as honest as possible, and he was very good to point that out, you know, during the entire process. But I don't really have any memory of, you know, something that he wanted to remove, to be honest with you. But, I mean, the editing process took 1 year, you know, and
I would think at the least it would take 1 year.
Yeah, so it just became, you know, something that we wanted to finish and put it out as soon as possible. Yeah, I mean, we were tired of it, you know, both me and him. I mean, imagine to have a filmmaker for 3 years with you, and then you have to edit that, and he's coming back and forth to you, like I mean, you know. So we tried to do it as smooth as possible, I think I showed him like only 2 versions, to be honest with you, just to make it as smooth as possible.
As he starts to retreat in the documentary, I was curious if there was ever a time where he wanted to retreat from the idea of a documentary. Were you ever in jeopardy of being shut down?
I mean, I stopped filming several times. I did, for different reasons, but again, it just became, kind of our daily life. I was part of his life, and he was part of my life, and we were traveling together, we were living together, eating together, laughing together, watching the movie. I mean, and I think when we live with someone else that close, it just became, I mean, you're not thinking of that person like, oh, he's a filmmaker and he's a DJ. You know what I mean?
Right, it's your friend.
Yeah, I mean, of course you started to be friends, definitely, but again, we never crossed that like professional line for each other. He was super respectful from day one, and I mean, of course, I was super respectful as well when it came to his job and private life, and I would always leave the space to kind of relax without the camera, even though we were living together in the same house.
Right. It's rare that you see an artist really kind of turn on the concept of performing. And I thought that was one of the most fascinating parts of the movie, because you always hear about bands like, oh, I'm sick of touring, I want to give it up. And we as fans have so much fun at their shows and have such a love for their music that we can't understand it. But the scene where he says that he looks out in the crowd and he sees all these people happy, and he's not, and he's just sick of it, was so raw. I'm just curious, did you see that coming over a long period of time, or was it something that kind of caught you off guard when you realized he was literally going to bring his touring to a halt?
I mean, when I filmed the letter he wrote to his fans, for example, I just filmed it and I didn't understand anything of it. It took me like 3 days to kind of process that. Even though I was there, I mean, of course I understood what he did,
yes.
Everything. But what I mean is that I couldn't understand what it meant to the fans, what it meant to his life, and things like that while I was filming. But then, a few days after, I realized that wow, this is like the best decision he could do for himself, and then you just see it happening, and I mean, it was exciting. But at the same time, kind of weird feeling of unreality, because we were so used to it, to tour and to just, live in a hotel rooms and, sleep at the couches. And I mean, it just became like your lifestyle.
Well, that's the strange thing, is that although he wrote the letter to fans, he still had all these shows that he was going to complete. And he was starting to edit which ones he was and which ones he wasn't. So it was almost like he was still trapped in this prison, just waiting for it to end, which was a fascinating point of view that you really don't see captured in documentaries that often. So I was very impressed with that. What was something in all the hours of your footage that you had to cut that there just wasn't room for in the movie, but that you want to tell us about as an interesting cut scene that you had to leave on the floor?
We had this very nice scene together with what's his name now, Mike Posner, when he's telling this story, but because he did the song called what's the name of the song? I just forgot it. But however, the lyrics are like, I took a pill at Ibiza to show Avicii I was cool, and it became a huge hit in United States, and so they met, and Mike was kind of he was explaining how he wrote the song and how everything kind of went down, and that scene was pretty cool, but it didn't really kind of suit it in my red line, so we had to cut it out, but yeah, that scene is something that comes to my mind all the time, because it was kind of very nice thing to see, like those two persons, they have like different destinies but are connected through the song.
At one point we see him talking on the phone to his mom. I'm curious, did you ever do any interviews with any of his family, or was that just kind of a line that he didn't want you to interview his relatives?
I didn't do it because, I mean, I always wanted to, give the family space to not be part of, like, their son's career or anything like that. I mean, I think that's a very private thing. So I was super respectful all the time when it came to that, and I just lived that part.
He ended his relationship with his manager Ash while you were making the documentary. Did that make it difficult for you to go back to Ash for other elements, or was there more of a postscript that you needed for ending his relationship with Ash?
I mean, it never affected me as a director. It didn't do.
Really, for the story of the documentary is what I meant.
What did you say, sorry?
For the story of the documentary.
But I mean, for the story, of course, that was kind of like something that got the explanation in the end, and I mean, I just saw that as any other side stories that the doc has. So, I mean, it was the same with when he retired. I was like, all right, this is happening now, and it's all about to try to kind of handle the material as good as possible and as clear as possible in order to really kind of use the valuable sequences as good as possible, because it can be really hard to not kind of kill your darlings sometimes, and,
right.
And it is hard to kill your darlings, and that means when you are carrying out something that you are really in love with, or when you are carrying out something that is very important for a story. But sometimes as a director and editor, you're forced to do that, and
It seems like one of the lighter moments, like a moment where he was really having fun, was when they did the road trip. And, he had everybody recording with him. They were recording in unusual locations. At the time of his death, there were over 200 unreleased recordings, some still in development, some completed. Is there ever any plans to take some of the road trip and some of the other studio sessions that you have and make more music-based documentaries that kind of show, again, just a deeper dive into the music and the artistry, especially for the material that is still unreleased?
I mean, as I see it, I see that as part of the music history, definitely. But it's still very fresh to me, and I'm not sure if I'm ready to go back and see everything and experience that one more time. But by the time, you never know. I mean, I guess I would love to do it in a few years, I guess. But right now, I'm not really in a position to do that mentally.
I hope you do. Obviously the music of the movie drives it, but as a filmmaker, you still have a score to go with your film as well. What kind of things did you do for your music score that didn't involve Tim's music?
I mean, music is, I would say, 80% of the storytelling. And what I mean with that is that when you apply the right kind of music to your story, it just became story that you're, believing in. Because I guess music helps you as a director to tell another emotional story at the same time as you're telling the real story. And that's how I see the music when it comes to the films. And I worked with a guy called Thomas Calder that scored the entire documentary. And that was also one of the very exciting parts of to work on, because I took my time as much as I took for the editing part. So we had the separated rooms, when one room was for the editing and one room was only for the music. So I would always go back and forth and make sure that we were on the same page in editing as much as we were in the music room. And that really kind of taught me that music is everything especially for a documentary, I think, to be honest with you, because once you find your touch and once you find your emotional kind of detector in the film, then when your film became something else, and when your story starts to be organic, and that was exciting part that I really enjoyed a lot.
What are some music documentaries or documentary filmmakers that have influenced you over the years that kind of maybe influenced even this film, or just kind of influenced you as a filmmaker?
I mean, Malik Ben Jalul that did Searching for Sugar Man, he was from Sweden as well, and of course,
great film.
He's been one of the biggest inspirations, I guess, for the documentary to me. and I was working in a Swedish national TV station at the same time as he was doing his like segments, and back then already, I mean, he was very good on it, and he had his like, you know, kind of very different style how he would tell the stories, even though it was like short segments, you know. And then he did the Searching for Sugarman, and it just became very clear to me, and like kind of source of inspiration, like, you know. So that documentary is something that I've been thinking of while I was making my documentary. Definitely.
Your film ends on a note of healing, in which Tim is taking time to himself. He's finally seeming to relax, but starting to get into a new phase of writing music, something that he could do on his own. What did you observe about that time? Did you think that he was really kind of going into a good phase?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
like, did he seem more at peace than the previous years that you had been following him?
Oh yeah, I mean, we did the last interview at Madagascar, at an island called Sainte Marie, and it was just a few weeks after the last show. And I mean, it was different Tim, definitely. More relaxed and, you know, all that. And I mean, it was great to see him, you know, to not be stressed anymore, and to be collected, and, you know, all that. So, I mean, it was definitely exciting times, and I was super happy for him, you know.
Were you ever torn as a filmmaker of boundaries and whether or not you could cross them? I thought a really poignant moment in the movie was when he's writing music and someone sets a plate of food by him. And then you go from literally a shot of that plate of food uneaten from day to night, still uneaten, and being replaced with a new plate of food, which I thought was just a great move and was showing how into his zone he was. Did you ever feel the need to cross the line personally, or did you just want to document it as a fly on the wall?
I mean, I saw that sequence, though, as you're talking about, as a great way to be as honest as possible how it works. I mean, if you are having the deadline for 12 different songs, there is nothing you can do in 8 hours from 9 to 5. I mean, you have to work your, you know, hack off. And that was how he worked. He worked nonstop. And from the beginning, I was super kind of respectful, and I saw that as an inspiration. But by the time I understood that, I mean, it's not good to work as much as he did, you know, because I'm by myself kind of working horse. And to see someone else working more than me just made me feel kind of inspired, but at the same time, that kind of taught me that, you know, sometimes you have to just wind down. So, I mean, back to the sequence, you know, I did that as a part of the story. I thought it was a great way to show how it works, you know.
The world was shocked on April 20th, 2018, when we learned that Tim had committed suicide. And it took people by surprise, and you know, especially as fans and non-fans alike. And I'm just curious, because you were so close to him, and just for people that might have friends or family members that also have, you know, issues with anxiety and mental health, were there any signs that you saw, or anything that you would advise someone to do if they have someone like that in their lives that are close to them, other than encouraging mental health and calling a suicide hotline?
No, I mean, we never saw it coming, you know. Nope. Not at all, unfortunately.
In regards to what surprised you the most of documenting the gigs going from small to big, and you kind of being thrown into the middle of a lot of it?
I mean, to be honest with you, it just became a very normal thing when you were on tour. You see those crazy amount of people, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, you know, and in the end of the day, I mean, you just see that as a normal life. So nothing kind of surprises you anymore, you know, which is a negative thing, I think, definitely. But what surprised me was how much he worked, to be honest with you, you know. That really surprised me, though.
You showed the near computer fail at one of his near final shows. where they weren't sure if they were going to be able to get it going. Was there anything else you experienced that was that close of a call, even if it was caught off camera? Because it was just fascinating the way they're talking about bringing an empty USB drive to try and back things up, like literally with 4 minutes before the show.
Yeah, I can't recall any
Okay, but
certain memories about, but I mean, I'm pretty sure it was. When you are on tour, sometimes things are not working as you are expecting.
what about for you as a filmmaker? Did you ever have a card fail from one of your cameras or a major equipment fail where you lost something that you're really upset about?
I mean, I was always forgetting my batteries though.
Or you wouldn't
And
recharge them, right?
It's very annoying because those batteries are very expensive, and especially when you have crazy amount of batteries surrounding your body, and you go down through the security. I mean, you look like a bomber. So the problem with that was I would always take off my belt and just leave it and then forget it, and you're leaving $4,000 or $5,000 just there, and you have 100 shows to do. So it became very expensive habit, and it takes time to find the right batteries. I mean, depending on where you are, of course. So that was something that came back all the time.
That's crazy. What other software did you use that became really crucial?
Yeah, I mean, I had 2 rooms, one for music, one for editing, and I had 3 editors, and then myself still involved in
what
that.
program were you editing
So
on?
we were using Premiere, and then we were using Logic for music. But what we did was I actually divided the material from the beginning in 3 chapters. That's what I did from the very beginning when I did my short selection of the crazy amount of different hard drives. And so those guys were focusing on their own on certain amount of material, and then I was going from A to C all the time during the day. So I mean, I spent as much as time as my editor spent in the editing room, and then I edited by myself as well, of course, some of the parts. But I mean,
He asked about Google Docs. Was there anything
we never
important
used
to-
Google Docs.
No, because
I mean, we were
you were just using cuts, so you really wouldn't be using words.
I
as
mean,
much.
I would always go back, from station number 1 to station number 3, and would tell them like what to do or what to not do, or they would tell me like, okay, this is not working. I never scripted anything. I'm never scripting my docs, and I never directing my docs in a way that I'm never telling the characters to like, take the glass and go and walk there, from left to right, and that is kind of like my style, and I know lots of people are not fan of that because it takes lots of time. That means you have to wait on the story to kind of have the conclusion, and you have to be there to be able to capture like piece.
Right, you essentially
Pieces here
found
and
it in
there.
the editing room.
I mean, editing is part of the kind of directional part, definitely. But to be able to do that, you have to be patient and really, catch them in the right time. And I mean, it's hard. It's hard because if I would record our conversation, I would record, from the beginning to the end, and it might take like 12 hours. And it's boring to record 12 hours, to kind of focus on 2 persons. So yeah, I mean, it takes time. It takes time, and producers are hating that, and distributors are hating that. But if you can convince them to really kind of give you free space and work on your own and really follow the story step by step, I definitely think that you're able to achieve something else, something very unique that hasn't been done before.
And some of it seems like it was anxiety driven because he said he has to get it done when he thinks of it. But how much free time would you say he had, or did he not?
I mean, when you are on tour, you always have like those days, in between and stuff. But those days are never free in a way that, I mean, you can't just, lay down and relax and, turn off your phone. I mean, there is lots of work to be done. that has to be done before the show. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, we all had free time, but I can't even remember how it was, to be honest with you. I mean, I can't call that free time, you know.
Sure, because you're
It's
still
more
on
of a-
assignment, kind of.
I mean, you're in a bubble, and, you know, you just work. as much
I
as-
guess an
as
interesting
you can.
moment to that was on the end of the road trip. He seems kind of disappointed that they're going to have a show the minute they land in Miami, because you could tell he was really enjoying the time off and, you know, wanted more time. And you could see him visibly change in that scene when he realizes that when the road trip hits Miami, they're doing a show immediately. And it seemed like he wanted another couple days off.
I definitely think that to kind of go in the studio and do the music, he saw that as a free time. I definitely think so. But I mean, as you see in the movie, in the end, he wanted to quit, and he took that decision to quit touring, which I saw as, like, you know, one of the greatest things, as I said before. And it was super sweet to see that, to be honest with you, because as we were talking about just minutes ago, I mean, I could tell the difference, you know. Stress was not there anymore. And it was a super nice thing to see. I mean, of course I cared about him, you know, a lot. As a director and colleague and friend and whatever you call it. So that was pretty sweet thing to see, you know.
What's next for you as a filmmaker? What are you working on? What's in the pipeline?
That's the question for my manager. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, I've been working on a documentary in Iraq since 2016 parallelly. And that's kind of like my baby project right now. So I guess I'm gonna go back to Iraq again. I've been there 8-9 times, and yeah, I'm really looking
That's a
forward to it.
huge difference from this
Oh, yeah.
documentary.
Yeah.
What could you tell us about the documentary in Iraq? What's the focus
It's
of
about the war.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Are you saying that
That's
when
I mean-
Bush said mission accomplished on the carrier, the war wasn't over then? Is that what you're saying?
War is over, but
I'm-
you know,
I'm joking,
you can
I'm
still
joking.
do the still do the doc about.
I'm making a bad American joke. We
That's
we
fine.
do not believe the war is over either. So how much longer do you think you have on that documentary?
Oh, I don't know. Hopefully not more than 1 year. And as I told you, I mean, I really want to be there and give it time as long as possible to the story in order to really get something that is not, you know, done yet.